Now, as we were saying, the two-week COP27 climate conference in Egypt is nearing its end. The Scottish climate researcher and campaigner Laura Young has been there throughout and joins us now. Thanks for joining us, Laura. There was a lot of buzz, I felt, about COP26 last year. This year's conference in Egypt has had lots of heads of government present, campaigners and negotiators. Has it had the same energy?
It definitely hasn't. This year, the atmosphere has been a lot flatter. There have been struggles to get those representatives from world leaders to the table. And it definitely feels like we've had less commitments, less announcements and less action. And even looking back over the last 12 months, we've seen less climate action in general, both at home and abroad, which has really left us with a flat, slow and quite stagnant feeling conference over the last 2 weeks.
Well, I mean, what did COP27 hope to achieve? You know, what were the goals of this conference and how much progress has been made?
One of the biggest topics coming into this conference was about loss and damage. And this term is a type of climate finance, money that needs to come from rich nations to climate vulnerable nations. And some good news is that we saw the First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, putting on £5 million of extra funding to loss and damage. And she did that not just because it's the right thing to do, but actually because she came to COP and met with lots of representatives from around the world. One of the roles that I have here is being a Tier Fund ambassador, and she met with some of my colleagues, one of my friends, Fred from Kenya, and heard stories and put that money on the table. But what we haven't seen is the domino effect from other countries. We've not seen new money pledged and not enough money pledged. And that was the biggest theme coming into this COP, was to get that money on the table. And we are sitting on Thursday with only a couple of hours, couple of days left, and we still haven't made that up.
And why are the developing countries reluctant to do this then, just because they don't have the money at the moment?
Well, loss and damage finance is for rich nations to pay for the loss and damage to life. And even in those packages, we've seen how so many countries around the world are being impacted and have been impacted by climate change. And so it's important. But I think there's been a lot of distraction in the last year from many nations around the world with everything we've been going through, that this topic hasn't been top of the agenda. But it's so important that bigger nations like the UK more widely, the US and other really rich nations do help out and provide this vital finance for all of the communities who are suffering just now.
The head of the UN said in his opening statement to the conference that we are on a highway to climate hell with our foot on the accelerator. Is there anything that's happened this week that indicates that things are going to be slowed down?
Well, actually, what's going to happen is we're going to have to speed the pace up. We've already heard rumours and probably expectations that this conference is going to overrun by 1 or probably 2 days. And so we're going to need progress to happen quickly, both in the negotiations here in Egypt for the text to be approved and actions and commitments to be made. But then we also need, over the next 12 months and beyond, more action to be put in place after a year where we really have not seen much change in terms of projections of global warming or bringing down of carbon emissions.
OK, Laura Young in Egypt, thank you very much indeed for joining us this evening.